Hey guys, this is Melissa Zad for Into Boxing, and I am delighted to be joined after a really long time by Mr. Eddie Hearn.
Well, now that you're an amateur superstar, congratulations on your recent victory.
Do you know what?
Via stoppage, which is unusual, not just in women's boxing, but in the women's amateur boxing. So you're a beast.
What can I tell you, Eddie? I'm looking for my matchroom signing.
Are you going to turn pro?
Are you going to sign me if I do?
I don't know. We have to see, won't we? How many amateur fights you had? One so far?
Just one.
Okay. Well, listen, we'll have a few more and we'll see how we get on.
Sounds good to me. Do you know what? You're a wily chap, because I was going to pick a bone with you about how you didn't mention my amateur win.
Yeah.
But you got there ahead of the curve.
Beat you to it. I knew it was happening, but I didn't realise you'd had it. So congratulations.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So let's talk a little bit about the card on Saturday night. Really fantastic card. Amazing main event and co-main event. Obviously, Katie Taylor facing a mandatory challenger, but still looking so in shape, disciplined, like so motivated. How do you think she does it?
I said to her up there, I said, you look better than ever. You know, she's 36 years old, and if you start talking to her about that or saying how many fights you got left, she gets really angry. But it's a testament to her. You know, when I saw her on the scales against Serrano, I thought, wow, you've really put it in this camp. But to see her put it in again for this opponent, like, this is a good fighter she's up against. It's not Amanda Serrano, but it's a mandatory challenger, undefeated. And sometimes these are the kind of fights that you can lose a little bit of motivation for, but not Katie Taylor. You know, it's going to be a tough fight, but I really feel like we're going to get a fantastic performance from her this time around.
I mean, it's just so impressive to me, the discipline that she has to kind of get herself into that shape, and she's so humble with it. You know, it's very impressive. Let's talk a little bit about the chief support. Obviously, we have Jordan Gill facing Kiko Martinez. Really tricky fight for Jordan Gill. He seems to have a lot of tricky fights.
Yeah, I mean, tricky because it's different. You know, it's a tough fight, but it really is a kind of fight where you know exactly what you're going to get. Jordan Gill is very skillful, as was Kid Galahad, and Jordan Gill is going to box Kiko Martinez around the ring for 3 or 4 rounds. Kiko Martinez is going to walk him down, he's going to throw that big right hand over the top, he's going to work the body, and Jordan's either going to be good enough to keep him off, stop him, or get stopped. Right, that's really what happens against Kiko Martinez. And when Josh Warrington fought him recently, don't forget he busted Josh Warrington's jaw. It was a war. Josh hit him enough times to stop him. And that's what Jordan's got to do as well. But it's difficult because he's got a great chin, and but he is coming to the end. But again, he looks fantastic as well. He came in nearly a pound and a half under, and I thought he'd struggle at 126. He looked great physically. It's a really tough fight for Jordan Gill, but he's had so much bad luck, Jordan Gill. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he can make the most of where he's got to right now, and forget about the past. He's got a real chance now to move forward to a shot at the world title.
Absolutely. So we've also got Ellie Scotney on the card, as well as Maisie Rose. But let's talk about Ellie's journey a little bit. Obviously, she has had, she's been tested, but she's had good opponents up until this point. What's the path looking like for her?
Ready for a world title, really. I think the winner of this fight is a tough fight against Romero, the European champion. The winner of this fight will become mandatory for the IBF title, the world title, and she's really been match made perfectly, I think. With Gianni, with Roman, and now with Romero. And I think after this, that's it. 100% fight for the world title. But it's going to be a tough fight. Romero's very strong. She's very fit. Can be a little bit dirty at times, unintentionally with the head and the elbows. And Ellie likes to stand and scrap as well. And I think it'll be a really good fight.
In terms of, obviously, Alicia Baumgardner, she's undisputed now at her weight. We've heard announcements that she's going to be facing Choi early next year for the... she's unified at her weight. She's going to be facing for undisputed. Yeah, I know.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah, appreciate it. So let's put it out there that she wins against Choi. Mm-hmm. She's now looking to move up. Yeah. Potential fight against Katie Taylor.
Yeah, both managed by Brian Peters as well. So Alicia has been amazing. She's a superstar, Alicia Baumgardner. I mean, I remember when I saw her walk out for the Terry Harper fight, I was thinking, gosh, she looks confident. And then she won, and I was so disappointed for Terry, and I didn't even represent Alicia, and I just thought to myself, she's a superstar, that girl. Like, she's got it all. And then, we had a defence, and then we negotiated a fight with Maya, and, the performance was unbelievable. Like, turn the commentary off, she won that fight. And she deserves everything she gets, because people don't realise fighters like Alicia Baumgardner, for years and years and years, were hustling for opportunities. I remember her sending me a message on Instagram, like months or years before she fought Terry Harper, basically saying, please, any opportunity, I will take it. And it was just one day she got lucky, right? God smiled on her and said, Matchroom are going to call you about the Terry Harper fight. And Steffi Ball, fair play to her. I mean, they were willing to take that kind of fight. They got beat. It changed their life forever. She made an absolute fortune to fight Michaela Meyer. She's going to fight for the Undisputed. She could fight Katie Taylor. She could rematch Meyer. Who knows? But she's, I'm really pleased to see fighters like that get the opportunity. Forget female fighters, just fighters that are grinding every day. Jordan Gill the same. Jordan Gill could have walked away from this sport 100 times. Lee Wood, look at him. Amazing. Like the amount of times I've seen Lee Wood and think he's done now, that's his lot. Comes back, wins the world title, makes a fortune against Conor in the fight of the year, can be fighting Santa Cruz, unifying against Warrington. I love it. And I'm so happy for Alicia Baumgardner, and we will continue to make sure we can be a small part of her changing her life, because there's plenty of steps left on the journey.
I mean, that's what boxing's about, isn't it? Mental perseverance and resilience, and Alicia has that in heaps and bounds. Talking of which, we've got Dillian Whyte facing Franklin end of the month, and there are discussions about the AJ fight being made should he get through Franklin. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think AJ kind of had it in his head to fight Fury, and now when you talk about a lesser fight, he's kind of like, should we just, what about Dillian Whyte? And I said, I'd love you to fight Dillian Whyte. It's a massive stadium fight. It's just whether AJ fights in February or goes in March or April. He could wait for Dillian Whyte, or he could have one first and then do that fight in the summer. Dillian Whyte's got to beat Jermaine Franklin. That is a really good fight, tough fight, 21-0, very good American heavyweight. And looking forward to seeing Dillian back in the ring, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see AJ against Dillian Whyte early next year.
I mean, definitely a fight for the fans. Everyone is kind of wanting to see that rematch. So, yeah, really exciting fight on the horizon. Obviously, I won't ask you too many questions about it, but have to touch on the subject of Conor Benn. It's been confirmed that he's had 2 positive VADA testing results. He's obviously relinquished his British licence. What can you tell us about the situation?
I mean, ultimately, I don't want to sort of deflect the blame anywhere. It's a very difficult situation for everybody involved. But we're not the governing body of the sport. We're not the regulatory body. Contractually, in that instance, I can't cancel the fight. The opponent can, but ultimately the British Boxing Board of Control will decide whether that fight's sanctioned or not. They had a very difficult decision, and again, this will come out, but because of the information from the tests, we're led to believe he's innocent. Now, no one will believe that at the moment until he goes through a full inquiry, but that's why, in my opinion, they took so long to make their decision. The disappointment for us is he never had a hearing. And over that period of time, we could have easily had a hearing. There's other fighters in the Dillian Whyte case where he had a hearing and was cleared to box. And I believe if Conor Benn would have been afforded a hearing at that moment, I think he might have been cleared to box. But because of the delay in making that decision, if the board would have turned around from that negative test and said, unfortunately, obviously, he can't fight and we won't sanction the fight, we issue a press release and everyone, it's really never talked about again other than the disappointment of Conor Benn failing a test. Because you're talking about weeks where and again, not defending the board, but I always defend the board. But they're taking in information, they're looking at the science, they're getting medical analysis, they're doing all this kind of stuff. But because then it gets cancelled on 3 days before the fight, it's like, it's my fault, right? Where really all we did was let the board decide what they were going to do. And that's not palming off onto someone else. That's me saying, look, this instance here, I've got one guy saying one thing, I've got the laboratories saying that this could be a contamination, the levels are so low. I've got other people saying he shouldn't be allowed to fight. British Boxing Board of Control. There you go. They had the information of every test he's ever done. And we let them go through the process. Unfortunately, I feel that, and listen, looking back, I think there's always things you can do better. But we just let them decide what they want to do. Ultimately, they made the right decision, in my opinion. But they just made it at a point where it looked like, for people to say, the board didn't know you were trying to. No, we just said, here's the information. And because of them not accepting VADA, because of past precedents, because of Chris Eubank saying that he's prepared to fight, because of the levels, because of the analysis, ultimately it was like that for them, I think. And I do think, looking back, they've made the right decision, but ultimately it took a long period of time for them to make it.
I think, a lot of people have questioned, because there were talks of, contamination through food, etc. A lot of people have questioned why Conor relinquished his British licence. Yeah. But he's mentioned, feelings of betrayal around the British board.
It's got nothing to do with a doping ban. He was charged with misconduct for an offence not in relation to a doping or his failed test ban or suspension. And it was a lot of money for something that he felt was particularly unfair. And he felt that if they're going to do that to him, there is absolutely no chance he's going to get a fair trial here. That's his decision. I wasn't involved with that hearing, I wasn't involved with that process. But he wants to take it to a higher level. You got to understand, this fight for Conor Benn right now is pretty important, right? Like, again, people say to me, oh, you shouldn't publicly back Conor Benn, me. But if I think that he's innocent, and call me deluded, call me whatever, that's how I feel. Right? I do not believe in any shape or form that this man has intentionally cheated. But ultimately, it's in his system. And you can't avoid that. So somehow it's got there, and you have to prove, and we know through the science, there is no way that this guy could have been cheating on this substance because of the testing process and the tests around it. This stuff stays in your system for 10 months when you're on a proper, cycle of it, if that's what you want, for physical benefit. But people don't really want to hear that. All I'm saying is he's having a pretty rough time at the moment, and some people will say, good, tough. But what if he's innocent? Do you know what I mean? And you have to understand, being around the situation, when we were doing the fight, his request to have VADA testing. He's a consummate pro in terms of his preparation, everything. He knows he's got UCAD testing, he's got VADA testing, he's got WBC testing. And yet you think that he would take, probably, and speaking to the experts, the worst drug you could take in terms of trying to get away with it. This is something that stays in your urine for months and months and months and months and months and months. So I believe him, but many, 95%, don't. So therefore you have to let him go through his fight, and that's going to be a very lengthy process. And he shouldn't fight again until he's been through that process and the public and everybody are aware of all the facts and say, okay, now you're either innocent or you're unlucky and you've got to serve your ban and take your medicine, and then you can come back and fight again.
Final one from me. Obviously, it's been said that boxing fans are quite fickle. Do you feel that they've given Conor, well, I know what the answer is, you won't feel this, but do you feel they've given Conor and yourself a fair shake throughout this process?
I think, genuinely, firstly, they're looking back in hindsight, there's always things you can do better. We ultimately went through this process with the regulatory body and a British Boxing Board of Control. They took a very long period of time to act, and again, not defending them, but it was a difficult process given the results and the science of the tests. Okay, Conor Benn, unfortunately for him, and I had this conversation, probably a dozen conversations with him, many of them in my office, with his father and with Tony Sims, with him in tears and not knowing how this could possibly happen, believe him or not. And I said to him on numerous occasions, I believe you. Tough shit. You're in it. You could be the unluckiest man in the world right now, but that's not going to solve this problem. You have to find a way to prove to people. And the other thing I say, Melissa, is, do you know how easy it would have been for him to come out and say, my wife is taking fertility treatment and I must have taken a tablet, because the amount within the sample was so small, it doesn't even equate to 2% of one tablet of this stuff. And that's where all the specialists believe it's contamination. But again, when you say that, everyone goes, pull the other one. Like all these experts out there, these medical experts, pull the other one, that's rubbish. But what I'm saying is, it's tough shit. It's in there. And I said this to him so many times in my office. I believe you, but it's in your system. You either have to prove it's in your system or come up with a science around the testing and the levels to prove you have not been taking this substance in any way for any performance enhancing benefit. And therefore, we don't know how it got there, but it's of no benefit to you. And in which case, if you can't prove that it is contamination, you will receive a ban. 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever it is, and you're going to have to take your medicine, and it's a brutal world. And if you are innocent and you never knowingly did this, it's terrible luck. But you are responsible as an athlete. And unfortunately, because of this testing, because of how rigorous the testing is now, if you are unlucky, you're going to get caught. But the good news is, if you're actually cheating, and many people think he is, but I've been involved with fighters, and I won't call names, that have now called me saying, oh, you're a hypocrite. Mate, there's a difference between failing 3 or 4 tests with people actually putting needles in themselves and injecting steroids to minute levels of what the specialists are telling us are contamination of a drug that just wouldn't even, cheating is quite an advanced process when you're an athlete at that level. And every specialist we speak to just says, you just wouldn't, anyone that knows anything knows that you wouldn't take this substance. Even Victor Conti, who's like, a genius at this because he's been through the process, has started almost, say, backing Conor Benn, but saying, look, it could actually be this and it could be this. And maybe it's because of my personal relationship with him where I feel that I'm backing him. But people said to me, probably you shouldn't really back him, you should distance yourself. I'm just going to be real with you and be honest with you. I've been through the tears with him. I've been through this whole process as it's played out. While we're waiting for the board's decision, this kid's training away thinking, is my lot like, oh, what the fuck's happened here? No one's going to feel sorry for him. I'm not saying you should, but what if he's innocent? Because when Dillian Whyte was innocent, no one apologised. They'd already made their decision. But anyway, that's that. See you tomorrow.